We have a very special guest for you today. A class of 2015 inductee into the Basketball Hall of Fame, the Iron Man of NBA officials. I would like to introduce to you Mr. Dick Bavetta.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
There you go. Nice round of applause for you.
Well, thanks to me.
The people love when, you want them to cheer for you. It's always a good thing.
Question. As a referee, it never happens. So I take advantage of these situations whenever the opportunity presents itself. First of all, thank you all for being here today.
Well, welcome back to Springfield.
It's good to be here.
Obviously, you're inducted into the Hall of Fame 2 years ago.
Right.
2015. To be back here and kind of back amongst all, your, former, some refs in here. There's obviously some coaches you've dealt with and players. I mean, what's it like to be back here in Springfield?
Oh, it's interesting. Even prior to September of 15, which was when I was enshrined, I started refereeing in 1966 in the Eastern League. And there was actually a franchise in Springfield, Hartford, New Haven, places like that. And never thought in those days that by going to referee a game here in Springfield, that it would go full circle 50 years later to be enshrined into the Hall of Fame. So it's something to dream about, think about, and never really believe that it's going to happen. But you just never know when things start where they're going to culminate. So it's exciting to be here. And when I look around, I had to speak, not had to, I was asked to speak a year ago at a high school tournament here. And Mr. DeLeva, who is the CEO and president of the Hall of Fame, asked me, do you have any stories? Have you thought about what to say? I hadn't thought about it. And then I started looking on the walls, and I see Pete Maravich, and I said, gee, I got a Maravich story. I had his 68-point game, and then I see Michael, and I see different players, so it just conjures up a lot of pleasant thoughts.
Take me back 2 years ago to, your enshrinement weekend. What was that like for you? Just talk about that experience and going in with that class.
Had to take some grief early on in the weekend because Dikembe still reminded me, I was in with Dikembe Mutombo, and he reminded me of all the technical fouls that I had called on him. And he knew, he had a number. He said, you called 35 technical fouls on me. And I said, it should have been 45. I let you go a few times. And his wife said, he's so pleasant, Dikembe. Why would you even yell at him? So as far as my class was concerned, it was exciting to be here, and also just to look around and the history of this building. And when my younger daughter, Michelle, was asked about her experience, I said, what was it like meeting everyone? And she said, the experience was being at the Hall of Fame and looking up and see the pictures and seeing the murals. So that's what I suggest to all of you is when you look around, realize the history that is here. And when we were getting ready to be introduced on the Thursday evening for our dinner, before our class went out, the comment was made that 54 Hall of Famers were in the audience having dinner as well. And so when I finally got introduced and went to my table, Tiny Archibald was at my table, and I had known Tiny Archibald from my many years in the Rucker League in Harlem. I refereed in the Rucker League in Harlem from 68 to 88, and he was quite a player in his day. And, I start looking around, and you start seeing Bernard King and Dan Issel and just Dr. J and all these great players. And I start saying to myself, what am I doing here? And my wife opens her napkin, and the silverware comes out. And she starts to put the place setting there, and I said, let's not get too comfortable I was waiting at any moment for someone to come over and say, Bavetta, referees aren't allowed here. So it just didn't seem possible that everyone that was in that room, at one time or another, I had refereed their games. That's the scary part. I was hired in the NBA in '75. So I did Tiny's games, I did Dr. J's games, I did all these games with all these players. And up until that point in time, as a referee, you're somewhat aloof. Players and coaches can socialize during the off season. They play golf together, they go out. Referees were kind of on an island of lost performers. You know, we're not allowed to kind of spend any time with players or communicate with them for fear of somebody maybe thinking there's some reprisals involved. So to finally have the opportunity to talk to these people, it was a great experience.
Now, you know, every official, I'm sure, has their story of how they wound up in the wild and crazy career as an NBA official, as a basketball official. Take me back to, you know, how you decided to be a basketball official, not necessarily the NBA, but just to get into officiating in general.
I had an older brother who was a New York City police detective, and he also refereed Catholic high schools, public high schools in New York City. If you live in the New York City area, it's a blessed area for sports. There's so many different summer leagues, the Harlem Rocker Pro League. We were talking, Harold, earlier about it, Jersey City League. There was always summer leagues to get involved in, and he preceded me by about 6, 7 years. So when it came time for me to maybe give up playing, I worked as a broker on Wall Street, and they had an employee league at the Downtown Athletic Club. He said, baby brother, whenever you're ready to start refereeing, I have all the contacts for you. And so you have to take a test, which I did. And if there are referees here, they would generally understand what I'm going to say and do a little bit better than maybe just fans. But you take a test on the last Monday of November, all over the country at the same time. It's a 50-question test. You have to, it's true and false. You have to get so many right and so many wrong. If you don't get the right amount, you don't pass. I passed the test on a Monday. My brother calls me on a Wednesday. He said, all right, we're working Friday, December 1st, 1975. We're working at Brooklyn Prep, which is a Jesuit Catholic high school, a freshman game, which is the lowest level game you could have in high school. I said, I'm not ready. I never refereed a game. I'd studied, thought I knew the rules. He said, meet me at 3:30 Friday at Brooklyn Prep High School, and we'll do a game together. I said, I don't even have a shirt. I don't have an IABO shirt. I got an extra shirt. I'll take care of that. You know, so I hang up the phone. I start thinking. I said, wait a second. I call him back. I said, I didn't pass the floor test. I didn't take the floor test. He said, I'm a New York City police detective. He says, I can give you the floor test. I'm a varsity high school official. I'll give you the floor test before the game. I have a shirt. You take the floor test. You're now qualified to referee a game. I said, sounds good to me. So I go there. We're standing at midcourt. And I said, teams are warming up. And I said, Joe, what about the floor test? He said, oh, yeah. Let me give you the floor test. So we go to midcourt. We stand in the middle of midcourt on this gymnasium floor, and he says, do this. So I do that. He said, all right, now your left foot. Do that. He said, now jump up and down a couple of times, spin around. I said, I do that. And he said, how does the floor feel? I said, the floor feels pretty good. He said, well, you now passed your floor test. So I don't think any more about it. But 2 weeks later, I get a letter in the mail from this association that said, please show up on a particular date at a particular high school. You need to be graded on a floor test. The floor test is when you actually referee games, and they observe you, and they decide whether you're accredited enough to actually referee games. And here I'm thinking that if you just check the safety of the floor, that was your floor test. So he got me started in basketball, and a great mentor to me. I made reference to him in my acceptance speech, and just kind of took me by the hand and took me through all the high school games and Easter League games that I did.
So fast forward to your time in the NBA, because that very first assignment you get in the NBA is, I believe, a Celtics-Knicks game. Is that correct?
At Madison Square Garden.
At Madison Square Garden. What do you remember from that game?
I really don't remember a lot. I couldn't tell you who the players were. I'm usually pretty good at things, but what was interesting is a lot of people would say to me that, were you particularly nervous before the game? And I'd have to say that I wasn't, and because I was prepared. The lesson to everyone here is that I had tried out for the NBA for 9 years, was rejected for 9 years. The responses that I was getting in letter form, if they did that today, it would be a human resources nightmare. First year, they send me letters, you're not acceptable, you have a boyish appearance. We don't like that. Next year, you have a balding complexion. You're too slight of built. I mean, they were very particular about why I shouldn't be in the NBA. Can't do that today, of course. But, so, trying out all these years, refereeing the Rucker League, refereeing in the Eastern League, which became the Continental League, I would see during the summer all NBA and ABA players in Harlem. Julius Erving, Billy Pauls, Nets players, Celtics players. I mean, even Dave Cowens came down and played in the Rucker League. So all these players that I had been experiencing on a regular basis every summer are now in the NBA playing. So to me, I had experienced these guys for so many years that I was as prepared as you could absolutely be in being ready to referee an NBA game. And the moral here is that sometimes when you try for something, whether it be a job application or some sort of a position that you want, and you're not accepted the first time, I'm a firm believer that the more no's that you get closer to the yes. And if you believe in your talent and ability, good things will happen. So every time I got a rejection letter from the NBA, it just was more of a motivation for me to work harder, not dispute the letter. I accepted it and just worked harder to ultimately accomplish my goal.
So 39 years as an NBA official, when you look back at, I'm sure you've obviously had your share of memorable games and memorable moments. I mean, when you look back now, what are the things you remember? Do you remember, those nights where, a Michael Jordan went off for 60 points? Or do you remember, classic games? I mean, what do you remember most from those 39 years?
There were a lot of games. Probably the ones that I remember are the game I had in Madison Square Garden in 2006 when Denver came in, and Denver was up by 19 points with a minute to go. And really put a whooping on the Knicks that night. Isaiah was coaching the Knicks, George Karl was coaching Denver. And one of the Denver players went in and did a spin around reverse dunk. Made them up by 21. So I think the Knicks felt that they were being embarrassed and they were rubbing it in. And the next time that happened, one of the Knicks players fouls the player hard and a riot ensues. And players were coming on the court, punching, fighting, just completely insane. And we stopped it, thought we had law and order restored. They come back out again. So I'm with two lesser experienced officials. Of course, being the oldest referee in the league and the most tenured, everybody was lesser experienced than I was. So these two officials said to me, "Dick, what are we going to do?" I said, "Can we determine who the peacemakers are and who the troublemakers are?" Very difficult to do. I said, "We're going to throw out all 10. And they looked at me with their eyes wide open and said, "Can we do that?" "Yeah, we're going to do it right now." So it's the only time in NBA history that 10 players have been thrown out of a game. The starters 5 starters for Denver, the 5 starters for the Knicks. And when I went to both coaches, I said, these guys are history. Give me 5 new players. Give me 5 new players. Representative from the NBA was at the game. He came in after the game, and he said, I was sitting, and you don't never know who's watching you at these games, although everything is on TV. He said to me, I'm sitting there, and I'm saying, what's the great one going to do tonight to get out of this? And he said to me, it never came into my mind. I never imagined throwing out 10 players. He said, masterful. I said, not throwing out 10 players leaves players in the game. If something were to happen in the last minute of the game, the league office would be saying, why wasn't he thrown out? Or why did he stay in the game? I said, so someone may complain about having 10 players ejected, but they can't complain on how the game ended, which was very peaceably. No one said a word, over and out. So those are the games that I remember where things just don't go according to schedule and according to the way you expect it to be. And that's one of the things that I share with the people that I work with. I said, you should always expect the unexpected in a game. Games, everybody who watches games on television, it's a 2-point game, and they're going to go for 2 and tie it. They're going to go for 3. If you just clear your mind and just say, this game is going to end a way that I can't anticipate. So just expect any possibility. And so that's one of the things that I try to do, expect the unexpected in a game. So there were a lot of games like that, triple overtime games in the playoffs, and Michael Jordan's 64-point game. But those, I mean, I would walk off the court at the end of the night if someone told me he scored 35. I'd say, oh, okay, had no idea. Pete Maravich had no idea. They called me this year because they switched the All-Star game to New Orleans. And it was the 40th anniversary of his 68-point game. And they asked me, what do you remember about the 68-point game? And I said, at the end of the game, both teams walked off the court. I mean, no one was high-fiving anybody, nothing crazy going on. I don't think the players knew the magnitude of what he had just done. But the following morning, now, this was my 2nd year in the league, and the first time I was in New Orleans, so I took a program from the game. I was saving programs. And so I took the program, put it in my bag. Following morning, I'm leaving New Orleans to go back to New York City. And there's a crowd at the airport in a restaurant area, and I'm walking, and as I'm getting closer, I see it's Pete Maravich sitting at a table like this, and a line forming off to the side, and he's signing autographs for everybody. I mean, I don't think twice about it. I put my bag down, I take the program out of the bag and get my pen, and I stand online to get his autograph. What do I know? So I'm standing online, and I kind of approach him from behind, and I tap him on the shoulder, and I put the program, so he still doesn't know who it is. I hand him my pen. I hand him a pen, and I said, could you write to Dick Bavetta? And he goes, Dick Bavetta? You called an offensive foul on me in the 4th quarter and wiped out I would have had 71 points. What the heck is going on? I said, let me have the program. You can keep the pen. And I just ran down the hallway to get to my flight. So that was, and then I saw him like 3 weeks later, and he said, I was just funning with you and so on and so forth. But I didn't ask any players for autographs after that. I didn't know how they were going to react. So
it's, basketball officiating, as you all know, is a very demanding job physically, emotionally, mentally, all that. But the longevity you had of 39 years in the NBA, what do you attribute, being able to have such a long career, in the league and, being able to keep up with the toll it takes on your body, night in and night out?
Well, if I look like you, I wouldn't have to work out every day. But most importantly, and it's something that we can't really forget about, I'm not naive enough to think I'm such a hotshot referee or was a hotshot referee. But I thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for allowing me to be an official and to keeping me healthy. I'm here today because he keeps me healthy and keeps me going. And so my 39 years, I was blessed by him. There were times where the weather was so bad, and I mean, I've driven from Chicago to Detroit 7 hours in a snowstorm to get there for the next game. And I come from a working family. My father was a police officer, my brother a detective. But I remember my dad, 10 o'clock at night, the alarm would go off, and he's getting up. I said, "Pop, where you going?" He goes, "Have to go to work." I said, "It's snowing out." He said, "That's why I'm leaving early. I got at midnight to 8. And his work ethic was that he would figure out a way to get where he had to go. And not showing up was not an option. So I tried to figure out how to get where I had to get and said a little prayer and just hoped that I would get there. So I was blessed. Physical demands. Did a little run this morning, work out every day. And as I've gotten older, I'm running a little slower. But the important thing is that you just get a routine and a regimen and try and stay with it.
You retired in 2014 from the league. Just the decision to ultimately call it a career. I mean, what went into that? How tough was it to call your last game?
Really easy. I was 74 at the time. I'm 77 now. Most people at 74 years old are not running up and down a basketball court. 74 years old, if you're working, probably a greeter at Walmart or McDonald's or something just to collect the health insurance. But the time was right. And I had accomplished, as it turned out, the goals that ultimately I was able to do, not knowing when you first start that you're going to do so many games. And the timing was right. And I just felt that I knew at the beginning of the year, spoke to my wife and daughters about it, and she said, we're with you, whatever you decide. And it was the right decision. I mean, retirement has far exceeded all expectations, and then being blessed to be part of the Hall of Fame, that's just an added bonus.
Got a couple more questions for Dick, but if anybody in the audience has a question that they want to ask Dick, if you want to go ahead and raise your hand, somebody from the Hall of Fame is going to walk around and call out a couple of you to funnel over there. So.
Oh, he's raising his hand. Oh, he works for us. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry.
We'll continue. Dick, I want to know because, 39 years in the league, and obviously you got your share of, people yelling from the crowds and coaches and players and all that. I mean, what's it like to have that kind of, noise from the crowd, directed at you? I mean, all eyes are on you when there's a call being made. I mean, what's that kind of pressure like? How do you adjust to that over the career?
Generally, I could handle it, but when the people are yelling and screaming how bad a call I just made, and I look up and I see that's my immediate family, I was a little bit more concerned. I was talking earlier to someone upstairs about Dan Marley, and I had a playoff game in Phoenix, and so when I worked in the finals, I always had my family with me. My daughters and my wife would always come to the finals. So we're going to Phoenix. We get there a couple of days early. We're driving to the game. My wife and I in the front seat, in the back seat. Now, my daughters are like 19 and 21 at the time. Boxes are opening, bags are opening and stuff. I'm trying to figure out what they're doing. And when we get to the arena, I turn around and look. They get out of the car, and one daughter has, "Go Thunder Dan, go." And the other one is, "I love you, Dan Marley." Now, when we drive into the Phoenix Arena, we're going into a place where it's players are walking in, the media is there, and I said, no, I don't think this is a good idea to be walking into the Phoenix Arena with "I love you, Dan Marley." So I dropped them off 3 blocks from the arena and said, "You guys got to I'll leave tickets at the will call window. You guys got to get there on your own." So it's just a glorious experience when your family can be a part of it. But and even on enshrinement night at our table was Tiny Archibald, and my daughter is kind of mouthing something to me, and I said, what? She said, I love him when he was with the Celtics. He wore number 7, and I said, don't tell me, tell him, tiny. And so, it's an admiration society of the people that I was privileged to be officiating. And I never took that for granted. I mean, I knew that my place, people are at games to see the players. So I always considered myself like the grade B actor, someone who you see in the street, you don't know the name. Gee, I've seen this guy, he's done commercial, what's his name? I have no idea. I like that. I don't need to, the players are the stars, the game is the show, the performance, and oh, by the way, I'm down in the credits. So if you keep that in mind when you officiate, I never took myself too seriously. I never had a problem. And in life in general, one of the greatest ways to disarm someone, even, and with the parents here, maybe this is not a good thing to say, but I wasn't smart enough that when my mom and dad came to me and said, you did this wrong, that I would say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It's so disarming. There's really no comeback to that. And when players on any level, whether it be LeBron or Kobe or Kareem or anybody, you name it, when someone approaches you and say, that last call, Dick, that leaves a lot to be desired. And I said, you're right, I made a mistake. What? I said, I made a mistake. And if they persist, and I said, that last alley-oop pass that you got ahead of the field, dribbling in, yeah. You laid the ball up, yeah. It rolled around and went out, didn't go in. Well, I didn't want to miss it. I said, exactly. I didn't want to miss the call. Things happen. So that became an accepting thing with me as an official. I had no problems going to a player, apologizing, saying I made a mistake, because humility is so important in all that we do, any walk of life. To say I made a mistake, not make an excuse to a teacher, or whatever that may be, just to own up to the situation, makes things go away a lot better.
All right, we got some questions. Come on over.
I thought I paid that bill. Oh, I'm sorry. It looked like my electrician. I'm sorry.
What's your name?
My name is Frank Lewis, and I'm from Williamstown, Massachusetts, and Naples, Florida.
What's your question for Dick?
Well, Dick anticipated my question by what he just said. I was going to ask about times in your career when perhaps something was going down the wrong road and you recognized it and you kind of turned it around. So you were talking about that, owning up to things where you perceived you made an error perhaps. So you've already anticipated my question, but can you point to maybe some very interesting flagrant or glowing moments when you had the aha, that was...
Well, along those lines, Frank, is that, to give you an example, I had a playoff game in Portland. It was San Antonio, Portland. And when you're the crew chief in games and it's playoffs, they have your microphone. So late in the game, I'm under the basket, and it's a shot, it's a rebound, and Timmy Duncan and Aldridge are going for the ball, and it gets knocked out of bounds. And, I go, Portland ball. I mean, I think it's the right call. The whistle stops the play. Timmy Duncan's, it's about 40 seconds to go in a tie game. He's jumping up and down. He said, Dick, you got the call wrong. I said, no, I got the call right. Horn goes off for a commercial. I said, Timmy, best thing for you to do, go back to your huddle, regroup. This conversation is over. He said, no, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. He walks away, he stops, he turns, he comes back, and he said, I'll bet you money that you missed that call. Now, I'm microphone. So I said, I can't bet you money. Yeah, I didn't think you would. He starts to turn away. I said, whoa, wait a second. How about a hamburger? I'll bet you a hamburger. He goes, you're on. So the game is over. People that know me, sometimes I engage mouth before mind. And I look at this play after the game, and I get to play wrong. And it really was the San Antonio ball. So about 2 weeks later, I have a game in San Antonio, and I know I'm going to see him. I know he's looked at this play after the game. He knows I missed it. I know I missed it. So on the way to the game, I stop off at McDonald's, and I get a Happy Meal. And I bring the Happy Meal to the arena in like a Marriott bag, and I put a note. Tim, you were absolutely right. I missed the call. Enjoy the burger. Love you, Dick. You know,
That's awesome.
So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you very much. Another question? Hey, what's your name?
My name is Al Vargas, and I'm from Danbury, Connecticut.
What's your question for Dick Bavetta?
I'd like to know who's your favorite current NBA player and why.
It's tough with current. I guess I'm retired now, I can say. I usually go by organization. I think the organization, I think San Antonio is a great organization. David Robinson was terrific, and Timmy Duncan, and that whole crowd, Parker, Ginobili, and stuff like that. My favorite guys are guys who are respectful, not just to me, Kevin Garnett. I'm not getting to a current player, but some of these guys who accept the fact that when you go back to them, I mean, it's, you know, I've said this before, Charles Barkley used to just break my chops all the time. I didn't catch anything with him. And I try to look for common denominators. Like with Timmy Duncan, his daughter's name is Sydney. My granddaughter's name is Sydney. So maybe in the captain's meeting, I'd say, how's Sydney doing? What do you know? I said, no, it's my granddaughter's name. Really? Well, you know, so we, little common repartee. But with Barkley, I read in the USA Today that he loves soap operas. So I'm on my way to do a Phoenix game. He's yelling at me, screaming, yelling, timeout. He's yelling. I said, if you don't turn around and go back to the huddle, I'll call a technical. No, you don't. I said, I have one last question for you. What? Did you watch All My Children today? He goes, no, I didn't. I said, Erica Kane is now going out with the chauffeur. Tad from the diner is going out with the wait. He said, you got to be kidding me. So I said, no. He said, well, All My Children is my favorite soap opera. I said, really? I had read that in the paper that day, right? So the only problem is every time I had a Charles Barkley game after that, I had to make sure I watched All My Children during the afternoon to make sure I was up to date on who was going out with who. But LeBron is a cool guy, doesn't really complain. Curry's a good guy. You know, most of the superstars that are there today are the guys that just go about their business. They don't need any extra help.
Awesome.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Got another one?
You must be a local hero or something. What's going on?
What's your name?
My name is Lawrence. I'm from Danbury.
What's your question for Dick?
I was going to ask, did Jordan complain as much as LeBron, but you said LeBron doesn't really complain?
No, really. And Jordan, honestly, I had a playoff game when Jordan was playing, obviously, against Charlotte, and it was 3 out of 5 in those days. And Charlotte split with Chicago in Chicago, so they took a home game away from Chicago. Now playing game 3 in Charlotte, and Chicago was really pumped. They couldn't afford to lose another game, really. And I call a foul on Kerr. And you know, I was calling official, you stand furthest away from the basket, and I did. And Jordan walks over to me and said, you know, that last call you made on Kerr, I don't think it's the right call. I said, well, you know, you're entitled to your opinion, Michael. So I kind of walk away a little bit more. He now follows me a little bit. Well, obviously, people in the stands can see him talking to me one-on-one, and everybody thinks he gets favoritism from referees. And I said, Michael, this conversation cannot continue anymore. I'm going to turn my back, and I'm going to walk to midcourt. If you follow me, I'll nail you. So I walk to midcourt, turn around, he follows me, bang, hit him with a technical foul. Chicago wins the game. This is the Charlotte paper. The headlines in the Charlotte paper is, finally, a technical foul is called on Michael Jordan. And it's a whole article about me and Michael Jordan, the #1 referee in the league, calls the technical foul on the #1 player. And I said, wow, if I had known I would have gotten all this attention, I would have called technical fouls a lot sooner on him. But he was just that good and didn't complain. And he put in the paper, he said, I did not use profanity. He did his job, and I did my job. So.
Awesome. Thank you. We got time for one more.
Yes, sir.
More fans. What's your name?
Martin Patrick Tewitt, and I'm from Danbury, Connecticut.
And what's your question for Dick?
Yes, of all the arenas you refereed in, is there anyone that you was your favorite, whether it because of the enthusiasm of the fans or even the floor? And I asked that part, say, because like Boston having the parquet floor, or Madison Square Garden, or any other arena, was there anyone that really you had was your favorite of all time, I should say?
I think the old Boston Garden, just my memories of growing up as a kid and watching games on Sunday between Russell and Chamberlain and stuff like that. And I think the Boston fans are the most rabid, avid fans that can be. But they're honest fans in that when a visiting team player does something of note, there's a slight round of applause, which you don't get anyplace else. So Boston would be right up there. Madison Square Garden, of course, and the old LA Forum. I mean, you know, with Nicholson sitting there, and no one ever talks to the guy next to him. There's a guy sitting next to him with a beard. No one even knows who this guy is. This guy has more money than Jack could ever hope to make. That guy's name is Lou Adler, and he's a record producer. He did the Rocky Horror Picture Show. He did The Wall with Pink Floyd. And in the 50s, which is my era, managed the Mamas and the Papas, Sonny and Cher, all these groups. So he's got more money than he knows what to do with. And one time, I'm playing a record at home, and it's an old album, Jan and Dean. And no one even knows who Jan and Dean is. But really? You like?
One of my favorites.
Oh, okay. Little Baby Talk was one of their big hits, right? Little Old Lady from Pasadena? Okay, right, okay. So I get this album, and on the back of the album is just pictures. Jan and Dean in the studio, boom. Now this is in, the album was from 54, 55. This is like 95. I'm looking at this thing. It says, Lou Adler in the studio with Jan and Dean. Clean shaven, thin, so on. So I take this album, I have a playoff game at the Forum, and I walk out before the game, and I'm walking over, and I always had this thing with Nicholson, is that, you know, when I come out, he stands up. I said, Jack, sit down, I'm not here to see you. I'm here to see Lou Adler. And he said, what? Lou. He said, you want to talk to me? I said, how about this album? He goes, where did you get this? I said, I'm a collector. He said, I'll give you $1,000 right now. $1,000 right now for that album. I said, really? He goes, to destroy it. He said, if anybody sees this picture of me online, YouTube, I'm done. So I said, no, just sign it and give it back to me, please. You know, so.
Just quickly.
Yeah.
Did you referee any of the games in 1979 when Seattle beat Washington Bullets in the championship, the only one they ever won?
Did not. That was my 4th year in the league. Generally, in those days, you didn't work playoffs until your 6th or 7th league, 6th and 7th season in the league. I did work Seattle, Chicago, had Game 6 when they win that. I had a lot of them.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I want to pivot to our Hagar Innovator question of the day from our friends at Hagar Clothing Company. And, you know, you've always been heavily involved in charitable work. I kind of want to just talk to you quickly about that aspect of your life and, you know, what that's meant to you throughout your career.
Well, I believe gratification is in the giving, and I believe in anonymous donations. And not that I question how other people do things, but my daughters went to a co-ed high school, and it had been an all-boys school. So for all the years that I went to their award dinners and things like that, they always would give out one scholarship in memory of a gentleman that had been killed in a car accident. So I said to myself that, having two daughters, that what I wanted to do is when they finally graduated, to set up a scholarship program that, and when you set up the scholarship, you set up the parameters that you want. So when I went to the Monsignor and I said, I want to set up a scholarship, a Lady Bavetta Scholarship, must be a female, must be a minority female, must be someone who is academically excellent and someone who plays a sport. And the reason I did that is when my daughter went to high school, she had never played a sport. And she just got involved in it and so on and so forth. And the great part about these things is that I get letters. So we're up to 4 scholarships now and have been over the years, and that's since 1986 at one of the schools. And I get a letter from a young lady, this was 2 years ago, and she said, thank you for the money for the scholarship. And I had 3 of the things. I was good academically. I was, last name is Ruiz, I'm presuming Hispanic. And also I wanted to qualify for the scholarship, but did not play a sport. So I tried out for the basketball team, made the basketball team. And because of that, I now play varsity basketball, have the scholarship. And it was so emotional to me because that's exactly what my daughter had gone through, that she tried out for a basketball team. And this young lady, in order to get the scholarship, did that and was very receptive to that. So even today, when I reflect back, there's just so many different venues to be involved in that you can make people happy just by offering a little bit of financial remuneration along the way. And if that's something that I can do, I'm all for it.
Awesome. All right, well, to close our afternoon here, we have actually a very special moment for everybody. I'd like to introduce Mark Crepeau of the Basketball Hall of Fame to come out here for a special presentation.
Thank you so much. While Dick gets ready, we're on the Basketball Hall of Fame along with the Hagar Clothing Company. Last year, we redesigned the Basketball Hall of Fame jacket, and then over the next 3 years, we'll be awarding new Hall of Fame jackets to all of our members. And it's my great honor and pleasure today to present Dick Bavetta with his new Hagar Naismith Orange Basketball Hall of Fame jacket. Just so you guys know, Dick is one of 16 officials in the Basketball Hall of Fame and only one of 377 people to ever be involved in the game of basketball since 1891 that are here in the Hall of Fame. So truly a legendary person, and probably even better than that, a better human being. And it's been my honor and pleasure to know you, and we hope you'll wear your, every time you're being honored as a Hall of Famer, we hope you'll wear your jacket proudly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Being from the New York City area, I can assure you I will not be wearing this at Penn Station or on the New York City subway system. And I'll wait for a very special event to wear these. Thank you so much. It's an honor.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to Dick Bavetta.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Dick's going to be
Thank you.
signing autographs right over there. If people would like an autograph from Dick, the line is going to begin around the corner from the basketball hoop over there. So thank you very much once again for coming.
Thank Hagar as well. All right. Appreciate it.